Welcome back to Capital Catch-Up. I'm Victor.
And I'm Leanie. Today we are looking at a slate of legislative activity from the 119th Congress that ranges from critical healthcare adjustments to how the government manages its own digital infrastructure.
We have a mix of substantive bills and ceremonial resolutions to get through, so let's dive straight into the legislation that could impact the daily lives of Americans. First up is Senate Bill 3886, titled The Nurses Belong in Nursing Homes Act.
The title is quite literal, but the implications are complex. As our population ages, staffing shortages in long-term care facilities have reached crisis levels. This bill aims to incentivize nurses to work in these specific settings, likely through loan forgiveness or grant programs, though the specific funding mechanisms will be debated in committee. It's a direct response to the post-pandemic labor shifts we've seen in the healthcare sector.
Right, and moving from healthcare to consumer goods, we have House Resolution 4626, the Home Appliance Protection and Affordability Act. This appears to be a pushback against recent Department of Energy efficiency standards.
Exactly, Victor. There has been significant friction lately regarding regulations on things like gas stoves, dishwashers, and water heaters. Supporters of House Resolution 4626 argue that strict efficiency mandates are driving up upfront costs for consumers. This bill would likely place a cap on how aggressive those new standards can be, ensuring that affordability is weighed equally with energy efficiency during the rulemaking process.
It's the classic regulation versus cost debate. Now, shifting gears to how the government governs itself, we saw some interesting movement on IT procurement. We have two bills with the exact same title, the Strengthening Agency Management and Oversight of Software Assets Act. That's House Resolution 2417 and House Resolution 5457.
For our listeners who might be confused by seeing double, this is often a procedural tactic. It usually means the sponsors are tweaking the language to smooth its passage, or reconciling differences between a committee version and a floor version. Essentially, this is about saving taxpayer money. The federal government spends billions on software licenses, some of which go unused or are duplicated across agencies. These bills mandate a comprehensive audit and better management strategies.
It's unglamorous work, but it prevents the kind of waste that makes headlines later. We also have House Resolution 6329, the Information Quality Assurance Act of 2025. This builds on the Data Quality Act of 2001. It likely tightens the requirements for the scientific and statistical data that agencies use to create regulations.
That can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, you want policy based on the best science. On the other, strict quality assurance processes can sometimes be weaponized to delay necessary regulations by endlessly challenging the underlying data. We will have to watch how the implementation language is written there.
Let's look at the Senate resolutions, particularly those focusing on education and workforce development. We have Senate Resolution 617 supporting Career and Technical Education Month and Senate Resolution 618 specifically recognizing CTE educators.
This aligns with a broader bipartisan trend we've seen over the last 5 years, a shift away from the college for everyone narrative towards valuing vocational and technical skills. These resolutions, while symbolic, signal to states that federal support for trade programs is a priority.
Tied to that is Senate Resolution 622, designating National FFA Week for late February 2026. This resolution also celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Alaska State FFA Association.
That historical marker is significant. Alaska's agricultural landscape is unique, and recognizing 50 years of their charter highlights how diverse American agriculture really is. Speaking of Alaska, we also have Senate Resolution 619, designating February 16, 2026 as National Elizabeth Peratrovich Day.
For those who might not know, Elizabeth Peratrovich was a Tlingit civil rights activist. In 1945, her testimony was instrumental in the passage of Alaska's Anti-Discrimination Act, the first anti-discrimination law in the United States, predating the federal movement by nearly 2 decades. It's a vital piece of history to acknowledge.
Absolutely. The Senate also passed several health and wellness resolutions. Senate Resolution 614 designates February 2026 as American Heart Month, and Senate Resolution 620 marks February 28th as Rare Disease Day.
These designations are crucial for advocacy groups. It gives them a peg on which to hang their fundraising and lobbying efforts for research dollars. Senate Resolution 621 also designates the last week of February as National Public Schools Week, reinforcing the federal commitment to public education institutions.
And we can't forget the international stage. With the 2026 Winter Games drawing attention, Senate Resolution 602 expresses support for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic teams, while Senate Resolution 623 specifically commemorates the accomplishments of Team USA ice hockey.
Always good to see a little unity around sports. Changing lanes to historical preservation, we have House Resolution 1352. This bill designates the General George C. Marshall House in Virginia as an affiliated area of the National Park System.
George C. Marshall is a titan of 20th century history, Army Chief of Staff during World War II and the architect of the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. Bringing his home into the National Park System ensures federal resources help preserve that legacy. It's a move that usually enjoys broad bipartisan support.
Finally, let's look at personnel. The Senate executive calendar has been active. We see a long list of nominations, over a dozen processed without detailed descriptions in the initial feed, largely military or foreign service promotions. However, one specific civilian nomination stands out: Ryan McCormick of Virginia to be Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy.
This is a key role. The Undersecretary for Policy essentially acts as the strategic brain of the Department of Transportation. With the ongoing implementation of infrastructure projects, McCormick will be deciding how grant money is prioritized and how safety regulations, like those for autonomous vehicles, are shaped. He is replacing Carlos Alberto Monje Jr.
All of these proceedings, from the introduction of the Home Appliance Protection Act to the daily debates, are captured in the congressional record. We've reviewed volumes 172, numbers 34 through 38, covering February 20th through the 26th, 2026.
These records are the official diary of the legislative branch. They capture every word spoken on the floor. And for the software bills we mentioned earlier, House Resolution 2417 and 5457, the record is where we'll look to see the specific legislative intent behind those changes.
So what should our listeners watch for in the coming days?
Keep an eye on Senate Bill 3886 regarding nursing homes. If that moves to hearings, it will spark a loud debate about healthcare costs versus quality of care.
And watch for the confirmation hearings for Ryan McCormick. The questions he gets asked will tell us a lot about the Senate's appetite for new transportation regulations.
That's it for this edition of Capital Catch-Up. Thanks for listening.
We'll be back next time the gavel falls.